There's a moment in this story, a single ordinary Tuesday morning, where a man sitting in his car behind a school bus made a silent decision. He didn't know the girl's name. He didn't know her family. But in that one moment, without saying a word to anyone, he chose her. And that choice would set off 88 days of something that most people can't even begin to imagine. Barren. Wisconsin is the kind of place where people still wave at strangers from their porches. It's a small town, about 3,400 people, sitting in the northern part of the state, surrounded by dense forest and flat farmland. The kind of town where high school football games draw a real crowd, where your neighbors know your name, and where most people go to sleep at night without thinking twice about locking the front door. It's not the kind of place where bad things happen. At least that's what everyone there believed. Jayme Closs grew up right in the middle of that world. Born in July 2005, Jayme was 13 years old in the fall of 2018, the only child of James and Denise Closs. By every account, she was exactly what you'd picture. A red-haired kid who rode the school bus every morning, came home to her parents every evening, and lived the kind of life that felt completely unremarkable to everyone around her. Safe, quiet, normal. Her dad, James, was 56. Her mom, Denise, was 46. They worked. They came home. They had a dog. They were a family living a simple, honest life in a small town, and there was nothing about any of that to suggest that October would come for them the way it did. About 30 miles away, a 21-year-old named Jake Thomas Patterson was trying to figure out what to do with his life, and failing at it. Patterson had graduated high school in the small community of Cameron, Wisconsin, just a few years earlier. By most accounts from people who knew him, he was quiet, bookish, a little awkward. He struggled to connect with people, and after high school, he couldn't seem to find direction. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. But that ended after just 5 weeks when he was sent home from boot camp. He picked up a job at a local cheese factory. He quit that too after 2 days. From the outside, Patterson looked like a lot of young men who just hadn't figured things out yet. But what was happening on the inside was something else entirely. According to his own statements to investigators, Patterson had been carrying violent fantasies since around 2015. Fantasies about controlling someone, about holding a girl captive. He kept those thoughts to himself, living quietly in a house his family owned in the remote town of Gordon, a place so rural, so tucked into the Wisconsin wilderness that even people in the region might struggle to find it on a map. A sign above the front door of that house read, "Patterson's Retreat." He was there alone. A lot. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was October 2018. Patterson was driving to his second day at the cheese factory job, a job he was already planning to quit, when he came up behind a school bus on a highway just outside of Barron. The bus stopped. The doors opened, and a 13-year-old girl with red hair stepped on. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. But something shifted in him in that moment, and according to his own confession to police, right there, sitting in his car behind that bus, he decided. That was the girl he was going to take. He quit the cheese factory job that same day. What came next was not the impulsive act of someone who snapped in a moment of madness. Patterson went home, and he planned. He drove past the Closs house once in early October to case it, but there were too many people around, and he turned back. He came a second time, a few days later. Same problem, too many lights on, too much activity. He turned back again. But he didn't stop. He wiped down his shotgun to remove fingerprints. He stole license plates from a vehicle in another county so his car couldn't be traced. He put on gloves and a ski mask. He was not acting on impulse. This was deliberate, methodical. And on the night of October 14th, bleeding into the early hours of October 15th, Jake Patterson made his third trip to the Closs house. This time, he didn't turn back. It was 12:53 in the morning. The town of Barron was completely asleep. And Jayme Closs, inside her home with her parents, had no idea that a man she had never met, a man who didn't even know her name, was pulling up to the end of her driveway in the dark. What happened in the next 5 minutes would hollow out an entire community. James Closs heard something outside. It was nearly 1 in the morning, and a light through the front door caught his attention. He walked over, peered through the glass pane, and saw a figure standing in the dark. A man, dressed in black, ski mask pulled over his face. James, probably thinking it was law enforcement, maybe an emergency of some kind, asked the figure to show his badge. The figure didn't show anything. Instead, a voice came through the door. "Open the fucking door." James didn't open it. What happened next took less than 5 minutes. Patterson raised his shotgun and blasted through the front door. The sound tore through the house like a thunderclap, and in the chaos that followed, Jayme Closs grabbed her phone and dialed 911. She didn't say a word to the dispatcher. She couldn't, but the line stayed open, and on the other end, the dispatcher heard screaming in the background and immediately sent officers to the address. That call would matter later. But right now, inside that house, Denise had one thought: her daughter. She found Jayme, pulled her into the bathroom, locked the door, and held her. A 13-year-old girl, terrified, wrapped in her mother's arms in a bathtub while a man with a shotgun moved through their home. Denise held Jayme in a bear hug, tight, shaking, refusing to let go. Patterson broke the bathroom door down. He looked at them both. Then he took the duct tape he'd brought and bound Jayme's wrists and ankles. He taped her mouth shut. Denise, forced to watch, could barely function. Patterson reportedly made her help before finishing the job himself. Then he shot Jayme Closs in the head. Right there, in front of Jayme. He dragged Jayme out of the bathroom, out of the house, and threw her into the trunk of his car. By his own estimate, the entire thing, from the moment he stepped through that door to the moment he drove away, lasted less than 5 minutes. Now here is the part that will stay with you. As Patterson pulled away from the Closs house, 3 sheriff's deputy cars came screaming down the road toward him, lights flashing, sirens cutting through the dark. They were responding to the 911 call. They were going to the house. Patterson pulled over to the side of the road and let them pass. They drove right by him. Jayme Closs was in the trunk of that car, alive, bound, mouth taped, as law enforcement rushed past her toward her parents' bodies. Nobody stopped. Nobody had any reason to. And just like that, Patterson merged back onto the road and disappeared into the Wisconsin night. When deputies arrived at the Closs home, they found James dead near the front door and Denise dead in the bathroom. The house was silent. There was no sign of Jayme anywhere. An Amber Alert went out. The FBI got involved. A $25,000 reward was offered for any information on her location. Volunteers flooded Barron by the thousands, searching fields and tree lines and back roads. Tips poured in. Over 1,000 of them, investigators would later say. Everyone was followed up. Everyone led nowhere. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. Christmas came to Barron, Wisconsin, and hundreds of people gathered in the town square to light a tree, calling it a tree of hope, and pray for a girl most of them had never met. Jayme was still missing. And Jake Patterson? He was 70 miles away in a cabin in the woods, completely off the radar, and Jayme was there with him, hidden somewhere nobody thought to look. What he did to her in that cabin is the part nobody talks about enough. The cabin in Gordon, Wisconsin, had a sign above the front door, Patterson's retreat. That's what Jake Patterson called it, his retreat, his escape from the world. And now, deep in the Wisconsin wilderness, 70 miles from Barron, surrounded by nothing but trees and silence, it became Jayme Closs's prison. The first thing Patterson did when they arrived was burn her clothes. Every piece. Gone. It wasn't random. It was a message. You have nothing here. You came with nothing, and you leave with nothing. Then he made himself very clear about what would happen if she made noise, if she tried to run, if she did anything he didn't approve of. Jayme was 13 years old, alone, and she had just watched her mother die. The space Patterson assigned her was underneath his twin-sized bed. That was her place. When he had visitors, his father, friends, anyone, she was to get under that bed and stay there, completely silent, completely still. To make sure she couldn't push her way out, he lined the sides with large plastic storage bins and weighed them down with barbells. The gap she was left with was barely enough to breathe in, let alone move. And he would leave her there for up to 12 hours at a time. No food, no water, no bathroom access. 12 hours in the dark, under a bed, in a cabin that nobody knew she was in. If she made a sound while he had company, he turned up the music loud enough to drown her out. This went on for 88 days. But here is something that often gets lost in this story, and it's the thing that actually explains how Jayme survived. She was paying attention. From the very beginning, Jayme was quietly studying Patterson, his moods, his patterns. What made him calm? What made him angry? What small things set him off without warning? She learned that cooperation kept her safer than resistance, not because she gave up, but because she was thinking. She was calculating. She understood at 13 years old that surviving meant playing a longer game than the one happening right in front of her. Over time, Patterson's guard began to drop. He started trusting her, or at least trusting her enough. They watched television together. They played board games. He took her on walks around the property. From the outside, if you didn't know what you were looking at, it might have almost seemed normal, but Jayme never forgot what it was. She never stopped watching, never stopped waiting. One day, Patterson allowed her to write a letter to her aunt. She wrote it. He read it. And then he folded it up, put it in his backpack, and never mailed it. He kept it. That letter, a 13-year-old girl reaching out to the only family she had left, sat unread in a bag while the world searched for her, and the world was searching. Back in Barron, the community refused to let Jayme's name fade. Volunteers kept coming. Tips kept being called in. The FBI reward sat unclaimed. In December, hundreds of people stood together in the cold at a Tree of Hope ceremony, holding on to the belief that she was still out there somewhere. She was, 70 miles away, under a bed. Then came January 10th, 2019, day 88. Patterson woke up that morning and told Jayme he was heading out for a few hours. He had a job interview at a liquor warehouse in Superior. He stacked the bins against the bed, same as always, and walked out the front door. The moment that door closed, something shifted in Jayme Closs. She wasn't going to wait anymore. She moved fast. The bins were heavy. Patterson had made sure of that, but Jayme had been watching how he stacked them for weeks. She knew the weight distribution. She knew which side had more give. She shoved hard. And one by one, the barriers that had held her in that dark, suffocating space began to move. She crawled out from under the bed. She was wearing pajamas, no coat, no phone, no idea what time it was or how long Patterson would actually be gone. The only shoes she could find near the door were his, oversized, barely fitting her feet. She put them on anyway, unlocked the front door, and stepped outside into a Wisconsin January. The cold hit her immediately, the kind of cold that bites through fabric in seconds. Snow covered the ground in every direction, and the trees that surrounded Patterson's cabin stretched out as far as she could see. There were no neighbors in sight, no road noise, nothing familiar. Any other kid might have frozen, not from the temperature, but from fear. Jayme started walking. She moved through the woods, through the snow, in shoes 3 sizes too big, until she spotted something that changed everything. A woman named Jean Nutter was out walking her dog on a trail nearby. Jayme ran toward her, and when she reached her, she told her everything: her name, what had happened, who had taken her, and where she needed to go. Jean Nutter didn't hesitate. She took Jayme directly to a neighbor's house, the Kosinskas family, who called 911 immediately. The call that came into the Douglas County Communications Center that afternoon was unlike anything dispatchers had handled before. A neighbor reporting that Jayme Closs, the missing girl from Barron, the one the entire state had been searching for, was sitting in their living room. That a man named Jake Patterson had killed her parents, and that she wanted to go home. Deputies were told to get there immediately and let no one in or out until they arrived. Patterson was arrested within 30 minutes of that call. He was still out, still running his errands. He didn't even make it back to the cabin before it was over. When officers pulled him in, he didn't fight it. He confessed immediately, walked investigators through everything, gave them every detail, as if some part of him had always known this was coming. 88 days, 30 minutes to end it. The sentencing hearing came on May 24th, 2019. The courtroom in Barron County was packed. Patterson stood before the judge, fidgeting, tearful, manacles rattling as he shifted his weight. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and 1 count of kidnapping, and as he was led out of that courtroom, he turned and said 2 words toward the Closs family section. "Bye, Jayme." The room went silent. Then came the audible gasps. The judge didn't flinch. He sentenced Patterson to 2 consecutive life terms without any possibility of parole, plus an additional 40 years for the kidnapping. His final words to Patterson before closing the case were direct and unambiguous. "The public can only be safe if you're incarcerated until you die." Jayme didn't speak in that courtroom herself, but she sent a statement, and one line from it carried more weight than anything else said that day. She told Patterson that he would never take her freedom. He would never take her spirit. Today, Jayme Closs is in her early 20s. She lives with family. She has quietly become an advocate for missing and exploited children, turning the worst thing that ever happened to her into fuel for something that protects others. The town of Barron, the one that lit that tree in the snow and refused to give up, still carries her with them. A 13-year-old girl, no phone, no weapon, no help, outwitted a man who spent years planning the perfect crime. She studied him. She waited. And when the moment came, she walked out into the cold and she didn't look back. Some people are just built differently.